I said about a year ago, I didn't know if I was going to retire or what. I've been training for 3 months, and I know you can hear me out there.
In May of 1996, Billy was contacted by WWF booker George Scott, and they were interested in giving him a second chance. After defeating Moondog Moretti in his farewell match on May 10th, Billy left Portland for New York, determined to take full advantage of the second chance. His first match in the Federation was against Frank Marconi on June 1st. Billy was now making between $8,000 to $10,000 per week, more money than he had ever made in his life. But almost immediately, he was finding it hard to keep up with the travel schedule, and his drug use became more rampant. Backstage, he was known for his quick temper and contrasting, soft-spoken demeanor. On March 27, 1987, the WWF would hold its annual extravaganza, WrestleMania. Its home that year, the Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit, Michigan, in front of 93,000 fans. Billy would face Hercules in a battle of the full Nelson match. During a spot on the outside of the ring, the plan was Hercules would bust Billy open with his chain while scuffling outside the ring, but Billy was caught on camera pulling the razor blade out of his wrist tape. Despite the blunder, and although the match ended in a disappointing double countout, Billy's stock in the wrestling business had just risen dramatically. But by 1998, injuries were piling up and life on the road was taking its toll, both mentally and physically. By January, Billy was mostly involved in tag team matches, teaming up with Ken Patera, mostly putting over younger talent and newer teams, including Demolition. The circumstances surrounding Haynes' exit from the WWF in January '88 have sparked controversy, fueled by the evolving narrative as Billy recounted it over time. According to one account, when the WWF was coming through Portland, they wanted him to lose once again, but not wanting to come up short in his hometown, in front of his family and friends and beloved father, instead of being pinned in front of everyone, Billy decided to stay home and no-show the event. The WWF left Portland the following day. Billy Jack didn't. According to Greg Valentine, Billy took a substance called GHB on an airplane, and after passing out and beginning to drool out of the side of his mouth, the stewardess sought medical attention and had the pilot make an emergency landing. The incident got back to Vince, and Billy was fired. Billy was burnt out and needed time off. He had been going non-stop since he joined the Federation less than 2 years prior. But he did attempt to invest his money. Not only did he pay for his father's house, in September of 1987, he had opened his own gym. And in 1988, he began promoting his own shows under the Oregon Wrestling Federation banner in direct competition with Don Owen. He had done what most men only dream of, hit the big time hard enough to make enough money to get out sooner than later. Billy consistently voiced his criticism of his rival, the Owen promotion. Even though he had recruited several of his old friends from Owen, after hiring big names and only producing mediocre shows, Billy was soon spending over $5,000 every week of his own money. According to a report published by Willamette Wee, Haynes' fundamental strategy followed the traditional wrestling format. He would put on shows 6 days a week, primarily in inexpensive venues such as National Guard armories and high school gymnasiums across the state. They would also participate in charity events and county fairs. The pivotal Saturday event would occur in Oregon City, the OWF's hometown, at an arena conveniently situated near Billy Jack's gym. He secured a contract with KPDX Channel 44 to produce and broadcast his program. This particular show would be televised, serving as the primary advertising platform for the other 6 weekly events. However, what truly set Haynes' organization apart from all others was the caliber of its wrestlers. Drawing from his own experience, Haynes understood which incentives would entice talented, skilled performers to leave their current pursuits and journey to Oregon. When Billy Jack initiated his long-distance phone recruiting campaign, he dangled the irresistible bait of exceptionally high pay by regional standards, guarantees ranging from $800 to $1,000 per week. He also assured them of transportation, providing 2 chauffeured vans, one for the heroes and one for the villains. Wrestlers would receive a portion of their profits from merchandise such as posters, t-shirts, and even action figures based on their in-ring personas. Additionally, there would be extensive TV coverage, ample advertising, and every safety precaution available for ring work. Billy's summons attracted over a dozen wrestlers and a top-tier referee. Notable names like Portland's Kip the Crippler Oliver, Coco Samoa, Brian Adams, Mean Mike Miller, Moondog Moretti, and Gorgeous Joey Jackson relinquished stable positions with Don Owen Promotions. Others hailed from various states such as North Carolina, Florida, California, Tennessee, Missouri, and New York, with some relocating their families over vast distances. Some even abandoned lucrative careers outside of wrestling to heed Haynes' call. Mr. Magnificent, Kevin Kelly, a prominent figure in the Midwestern circuit, entrusted his Minneapolis car dealership to a manager and promptly flew to Portland upon receiving Billy Jack's invitation. By March and early April, the OWF started revealing cracks in its foundation. When Billy's business partner Kaplan requested a contract, Haynes declined. Even before Haynes' inaugural wrestling event, Kaplan withdrew from the venture, claiming to have taken with him over $100,000 worth of potential investors. Upon the wrestlers' arrival, Haynes requested that they work for half the guaranteed money, stating it was temporary until the promotion gets off the ground. Even at half pay, it exceeded what many of them had been earning in their prior territories. Following months of meticulous preparation, the highly anticipated OWF kickoff took place on Saturday night, May 7th, at the 2,000-seat Oregon City Civic Center. The OWF debut drew an audience of 1,800 people, but their attendance declined significantly thereafter. Only 550 showed up the following Saturday. While the Saturday night shows typically attracted between 300 and 600 ticket buyers, attendance for the other 6 nights either failed to materialize or rapidly dwindled. The shows during the week regularly drew crowds under 50. OWF performers began standing on street corners, handing out flyers in small Oregon towns. JT, Rock and Roll Southern, would comment, "I was completely humiliated. It was like we were begging people to come and see us wrestle. We would arrive in a town and nobody would know we were coming. There were no posters, no ads, no radio spots. Do you know what it's like to wrestle in front of 30 people? The worst feeling in the world is when you're in the dressing room lacing up your boots and you know there's only 30 people out there. But you've got to get up for it. They've paid their money and they deserve a show. You say, 'Oh Lord, let me get through this night.'" Initially in the main event of each card, Billy Jack eventually ceased to make appearances altogether in the road shows, wrestling solely on Saturday nights in Oregon City. "Billy let himself go," said wrestler Brian Adams. "His hair was a mess, he didn't shower, he was in the worst shape of his life. He didn't even bother to put his teeth in anymore." When Billy's expectations of through-the-roof ticket sales didn't get off the ground, he started shorting the wrestlers on payouts. "I was getting $400, explained Coco Samoa. Then one week he gave me $300 and told me he'd make up the difference the next week. The next week he'd give me $200 and say he'd make it all up in the next check. But the next week it was down $150. For the first time in his 18-year wrestling career, he didn't have enough to pay his own rent. Payments were also lagging behind on utility and equipment bills, as well as the lease for the Oregon City Arena. The stress was wreaking havoc on Billy's sleep. Most of the original crew, including a referee, had already departed, resorting to borrowing money or selling and pawning belongings to fund their departure from Oregon. Billy surprised the remaining crew when he informed a local newspaper that the departing wrestlers had been released due to failing drug tests. On Friday, July 15th, the already strained relationship between Billy Jack and his team reached a breaking point. After receiving their $150 paychecks, all the wrestlers insisted on a meeting with Billy. Following 2 disastrous and badly arranged shows, the Oregon Boxing and Wrestling Commission refused to issue any more permits or licenses to Oregon Wrestling Federation. It was over. The venture had lasted less than 3 months. During the first days and weeks after the closure of OWF, a flood of enraged wrestlers and creditors, Billy hid out at a secret location and ignored all of his phone calls. He would eventually come out of hiding and issue the following statement. "I was a promoter, and it was my responsibility to make sure things got done. I didn't do it. I've lost my dream, and I feel lower than a midget. I thought I was cut out to be a promoter, but I was wrong. I'm not a big enough prick." So after only a few months, he was down over $1 million, and the promotion folded. At the same time, his gym also shut down. He had no choice but to go back to work for Don Owen. By the end of 1988, Both his savings account and his list of friends had shrunk to almost nothing. Due to stress and a lack of exercise, he was in the worst physical shape he had ever been in before. He had a dozen creditors threatening lawsuits and was on the brink of bankruptcy. Billy would spend some time in Japan, but within a year, he was back in Portland working for Don Owen. By 1990, things would start looking up. Billy would debut in Herb Abrams' UWF, and in early 1991 would land a deal with WCW, appearing under a mask as Black Blood. According to Billy, after helping train Brian Adams and helping him get into Portland wrestling, and then again help him to get into the WWF, Brian gave him no respect. Brian and an unnamed individual would contact Billy and inform him the WWF was in Texas and Billy had a tryout. Billy drove all the way from Portland to Texas, only to find out he had been ribbed.
I said about a year ago I didn't know if I was going to retire or what. I've been training for 3 months, and I know you can hear me out there.